Waterways, harbours, rivers and creeks are owned and controlled by the Crown. Those lucky enough to afford yachts and boats need to moor them in handy locations. On Sydney Harbour in particular, it's now big business from which the government can leverage significant revenue from those awarded marina and foreshore leases. Just west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge at Berries Bay, there's a growing row over a plan by the state government for a marina lease. There's agreement that boatyard and marine activities are appropriate, but no consensus about the scale of the marina. The government and the proponent are now heading for a confrontation with the locals. Let's have a look.
This bay is, as you can see, a gem. It's part of Sydney's heritage.
Since 2007, when the state government called for expressions of interest from private developers, 4 ministers of the Crown, Joe Tripodi, Eric Roosendahl, Paul McClay and now current Roads and Freight Minister Duncan Gay, have been dealing with the vexed issue of marina development at pretty Berries Bay, just west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Well-known structural engineer Dr Sid French lives nearby and is part of the Waverton Precinct Committee leading objections.
We have no objection as a community to there being a development in the bay. The bay has always had a maritime history. It's had an ongoing marina presence and there's been a working waterfront concept going here. We're more than happy to see that continue. Our objection is that the scale of the proposal has grown and it is now what we think too big for this bay.
Well, is it too big? The objectors produced this graphic they composed after their formal consultation meeting with the government's preferred lessee, Pacifica Developments. They say it will effectively privatise Berries Bay for marina clients and will include a separate marina on the old BP Dolphin Wharf for super yachts up to 45 metres in length. Public access to the waters of the bay will be constrained by locked and secured private marina berths for 40 years and probably in perpetuity.
The ultimate effect will be a wall of plastic boats.
The assessment of our DA will be heavily marked on what visual impacts there are. And the guidelines for assessment of that are extremely strict. It's a science which is laid down and we'll have to go through those gauntlets like anybody else. So it's not an old Part 3A type process. There is plenty of time for the community to see what it is we propose, see our side of the story, see the visual impacts and make their own assessment.
Managing Director of the government's preferred proponent, Pacifica Developments, a Queensland marina company, is prominent yachtsman Russell McCart. He's an experienced marina operator and former CEO of Mirvac. Pacifica, formerly Meridian Marinas, won preferred status after expressions of interest were sought in 2007. A bigger onshore development originally proposed has been scaled back to a $25 million capital investment. Public access to the foreshore is guaranteed, heritage buildings are preserved.
This isn't the last opportunity for people who are interested to have a say or to form a view. There is the whole normal public consultation process to go through once we lodge a DA, and there's nothing that's set in concrete or that's been agreed that is inflexible.
The objectors complain that since Mr McCart's company won preferred lessee status, he's been able to negotiate an extension of the on-water lease area by a third, an additional 10 years to 40 years on the lease duration, and a reduction of the rent, without fresh competitive tenders being called. Is this true?
Some of the things that are around the transaction are commercial in confidence at the moment, and we haven't got permission from the state government yet to lodge our DA. I don't personally believe that the scale of the development at all is excessive. In terms of the marina itself, it occupies about 15% or less of Berries Bay.
The commercial in confidence process means that the government is not required to in fact inform the public what kind of return that they are asking for on the site. And we believe over a number of development applications on this site that the government is clearly asking for too much money.
Roads and Freight Minister Duncan Gay was interstate and unavailable for an interview. In a statement, he said an independent probity assessor had determined that negotiations with Pacifica could continue despite the time elapsed, subject to a fresh site valuation.
An updated independent valuation of the site was conducted by FPV Consultants. This valuation indicated that the net present value of the proposed changed terms and conditions for the agreement for lease exceeded the current value of the site.
Russell McCart secured Maritime Services permission to release to us this marina graphic to counter the "it's too big" claims of the Berries Bay objectors. This area is well known for its harbour foreshore sensitivity. In the 1930s, then Premier Jack Lang intervened to save adjoining Ball's Head as public bushland, now popular on New Year's Eve for the fireworks and throughout the year for dog walkers, picnickers and joggers. And according to former North Sydney Mayor Ganya McCaffrey, a similar happy consensus was reached more recently with Government and Maritime Services when the old BP tank farm was demolished and full public walkway access with spectacular landscape vantage points was negotiated.
The council followed the Sydney Harbour Regional Environment Plan.
The objectors acknowledge there's no suggestion or suspicion of corruption in the Berries Bay dispute, but in the context of recent ICAC revelations, they're asking the government to now intervene to apply harbour planning controls. This should happen, they say, before Pacifica submits its development application, which will be merit assessed by a joint regional planning panel.
If the government won't comply with its own planning controls, how can the public have any confidence in the planning system? That you must put public good over private good. And yet we have the government here proposing to fill this small, beautiful little heritage bay with a parking lot of super yachts.
There's 4,500 square metres of public park and in total 5,700 metres of public open space in an area where it's zoned for boat building and marine related facilities. There's going to be a limit at some point in time as to what's commercially viable on the site.